So, anyway, I was kind of shocked. I know this may sound to you like too much information, but I go into the men's room and I'm not sure what the sign was in there for. So there's a big sign in the men's room over there by the reception area, and it says, you know, attention, warning, all this stuff. So being the curious guy I am, I start to read it. And it starts explaining to me how drinking when pregnant is hazardous to your health. I don't know what it's doing in the men's room, but it was clearly in there. So, yeah. That tells you how many of you guys actually read the sign that said warning, you know. Big shocker, okay. I was in the men's room. As a matter of fact, I went and checked the sign to make sure that I was in the right room. And I will also tell you that I've never found a urinal in a men's room. So just so we're clear, I got that validated. All right.
I didn't see a sign in the men's room.
All right, so look, the act behind me is going to do much better. So, hey, listen, we're fortunate. We do still have the acting director of ALC, the executive director, Don Nitty here, and he's got the panel on CCAD readiness. So think about as they go through and challenge them with your questions. You know, the strangest thing I see at this is when I walk into the other room and I hear people say, well, I wish he'd talked to her. I wish she had talked about this. Or, you know, I should have asked. I got to tell you, you just remain ignorant if you don't ask. I don't know any other blunt way to say it. So take your time, ask the questions, put them on the spot. That's why we bring them here. If it was easy, we wouldn't, you know, give them like a free lunch. So anyway, Don, with that, if you'd introduce your panel and take it away.
I will do that. Can you hear me? Okay, just initially for the panel, before we get started, if you don't need your knife, fork, and your napkin, please pass it down this way.
I might hold on to my knife. Yeah. I was going to use it.
So,
my knife.
So it is right after lunch, and we have a very exhilarating panel that I'm sure that is going to keep you awake. I would recommend that. I see the numbers are starting to dwindle a little, sir. So maybe if we had alcohol during the panels, it would be a better turnout. But no, I think more and more people are coming in now. But in all seriousness, we have a very diverse and experienced panel of logisticians, maintainers, engineers, all focused on readiness. And I'll just take a few minutes to do a very quick introduction of each of them before we get started. So immediately to my right is Mr. Mark Wagner. He's a Department of the Army civilian, currently serving as the deputy to the commander of Corpus Christi Army Depot. He has over 15 years of experience in financial analytics and maintenance, both as a Department of the Army civilian and also within industry. To his right, Mr. Larry Hoffman is a contractor with Huntington Ingalls Industries. He's working in support of the U.S. Army Aviation Missile Research Development and Engineering Center, MRDEC, located here at CCAD. He serves as a helicopter, or he has served as a helicopter engineer for over 35 years, both as a Department of the Army civilian and as a contractor, and he supported soldiers with engineering support around the world. To his right, we have Mr. Cesar Cifuentes, who is a contractor with Aviation Solutions, also working with MRDEC here at CCAD. He is an aerospace engineer tasked with developing DEMWARs. He has 20 years of structural and composite maintenance experience, both in the military with the U.S. Marine Corps and in industry, both on helicopters and large commercial airplanes. To his right, we have Mr. Steve Kinski. He is a Department of Defense civilian with the Defense Logistics Agency Aviation out of Fort Belvoir, Virginia. He's currently the operations officer and primary advisor to the DLA Aviation Commander. He has 26 years of experience in the DoD as well as a U.S. Navy logistics officer. His specialty is in supply chain and aviation strategic sourcing. To his right, we have Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Nowakowski. He is with the 1109th Theater Aviation Sustainment Maintenance Group, TASM-G, at a Connecticut Army National Guard. He is currently serving as the Deputy Commander of the 1109th, and he is the full-time facility supervisor in Groton, Connecticut. He has 17 years of military experience with deployments to Iraq, Kuwait, and Kosovo, and he is a UH-60 pilot. And last but not least, on the end, and we didn't put him down there because he's Air Force, but we have Mr. Jeffrey Hess, who is a Department of Air Force civilian with Special Operations Forces and Personnel Recovery and Rotary Wing Division in Robins Air Force Base, Georgia. He currently serves as the Product Support Manager and oversees acquisition, modifications, and sustainment on a number of aircraft, including the UH-60, the UH-1, and the C-130. He served in the U.S. Air Force as an aviation logistician, and he has over 31 years of experience in logistics, including 20 years on active duty. So just a quick round of applause for our panel today. So what we've asked each of the panel members to do is just take about 5 minutes to give a quick overview of their organization, the capabilities that they have to support readiness and to support CCAD, and then we will open the floor for any questions that you have. So, Mark.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to keep mine a little short because I have 2 engineers after me, and I want the Air Force guy to have time on the end. So you've heard a lot about CCAD today, so some of what I'm going to touch on initially you've already heard throughout the morning. Number one, our main output to readiness from what we do at the depot is, the Colonel talked this morning about, we basically have 2 different depots. We have the aircraft side, which delivers all up aircraft back to the field. On that side, our predominant line, of course, is the recap line for the Black Hawk. We also do crash battle damage, predominantly Apaches right now, and of course we deliver Pave Hawks back to the Air Force. On the component side, the other 60% of our work is those components that go back on the shelf for the warfighter to be able to pull and maintain their readiness in the field, which is where you hear of the aviation, the readiness drivers this morning. That's where our focus is on that side of the business. The Colonel also mentioned this morning that readiness is not a business model. But one of the things I'd like to highlight in that impact of readiness is the ability to recap or remanufacture versus new buy across the board between aircraft and components is about a 48% saving. So it allows us to buy more readiness more efficiently on that side. With that being said, I'm really going to focus on the main thing we have out there that immediately returns readiness back into the field. We have depot field teams that go out and they restore aircraft on the ground, get them back up for those in the field. Since FY11, our DFTs have returned 719 assets to the fight, predominantly H-60, but that's H-58s, 47s, and 64s. Next slide. I won't talk about this slide a whole lot, but you can see we have an impact around the globe. Where you see up there is predominantly the LinkedIn, the AFSBs out front, but we operate all through those theaters and forward operating bases as necessary. And I'd like to real quickly recognize if you have in-depth questions, you know, you never ask the senior leader, you want all the detail right. Mr. Kurt Barefoot, I know you're out there, if you would stand up real quick. Mr. Kurt Barefoot is the one who handles sending out our field teams, the chief of those operations on that side. Thank you, Kurt, for that. Next slide. I won't hit a lot on the locations. I think everybody understands why Rucker is the predominant location. We have a forward team there on that side. But what we do track is, obviously, is the side of what are the things that are going on? What are the trends we're seeing in the field? So our DFTs have capability to handle these type of repairs. And you see the 345 channel and the force generator beam are at the top of that list. So we get those artisans out to handle that. A lot of that data as we do those repairs obviously feeds back into our folks to the right of me here, so they can analyze that and see those trends and how to better support you out in the field on that side. Next slide. So the real question for those in the field is, how do I do this quickly and effectively? I have an AOG I need to take care of, and I need to do it right now. So up in the red there, when an aircraft is on the ground, we obviously take all calls, all questions to us. We get a lot of folks, though, who don't always understand the key part of the process. The first and quickest, the first thing you really need to do is get that estimated cost of damage to AMCOM, to the ALC. After that, they take the ball, they run with us, they get the team deployed out into the field. So that ECOD is key in order to get the process moving. We start doing phone calls, we can start getting a team ready, but we really need that to get the ball moving. It allows the team to be complete and targeted, to make sure we send the right artisans out for the right work. Focus on that damage, ensure the MECs are filed before we go, and ensure the photos that we get include the details so we can prepare for what we need to get out to you. So that's really critical. However, if you look down there at the bottom, I know Mr. Jamie Felgenhauer is also out here in the audience somewhere. I can't see with the slide on, so I think that's him standing up, I hope, on that side. But that's his number. Two things here. You obviously get with Mr. Kurt Barefoot or one of these folks, they will put you in the right direction. The other value is you don't just have field teams that go out, but if you get a hold of Jamie, you get a hold of our team, you can have that reach back support. You're able to call in and get your gentleman in the field, your soldier in the field, with our artisan back in the depot, and be able to make that linkage and help get to a repair. We talked a lot about our awardee this morning on that side, and that gives you that capability to sometime go beyond that level of maintenance and help get something back up and getting it back up there for the warfighter on the readiness side. Anyway, that's pretty much the short discussion. Again, if you have any questions, we'll take them at the end, but that's overall what we do.
Oh, I think that's the wrong deck. Larry, you're up. He's bringing it up now.
I'll go ahead and get started to keep time short. My name's Larry Hoffman. I'm an aircraft repair engineer with Huntington Ingalls Industries, HII, Fortune 500 company. I'm also a contracted engineer through HII to the Maintenance Engineering Division at Corpus Christi. The Maintenance Engineering Division at Corpus is focused on Army aviation readiness through its efforts to improve component reliability, repairability, and availability. That's what they do. Next slide. So, the Maintenance Engineering Division is part of the Aviation Engineering Directorate at Redstone. The chief of the directorate is Keith Darrow. He is the Army's Airworthiness Authority. That authority is delegated to him by DA through the AMCOM commander. AED, we call it, is also under the Aviation Missile Research Development and Engineering Center, AMRDEC. So you hear a lot of terms interchangeable, but we are the Maintenance Engineering Division at Corpus. So the AED at Redstone has a number of divisions there representing each of the U.S. Army Aviation's weapon systems and the engineering disciplines necessary to support acquisition and sustainment of those systems. At Corpus, Mr. Darrow has one division, and it's a Maintenance Engineering Division, and the chief is Kevin Reese, and Kevin Reese is here with us this afternoon. Many of y'all have met him. He represents AMRDEC at the depot. Next slide. All right, these are the locations illustrated where Maintenance Engineering Division is located. At Corpus, we have 120 personnel, both contracted and Army civilians. At Redstone, we have the sustainment branch with 30 contractors and civilians. Then spread out around the world with its branch chief at Corpus, that's Clarence Hitchings, is the Liaison Engineering Division. You've heard them mentioned a number of times today indirectly. The liaison engineers are located in Afghanistan, where we currently have 2 personnel. We've had personnel in theater since 2003, and we've been supporting the theater since things started in 2001. We have an engineer in Korea, Hawaii, throughout continental U.S., and in Europe. We have 2 engineers at Fort Rucker. We have 4 engineers at Campbell, including a couple dedicated to special operations. Next slide. So this is the, go ahead and click it one more time. This is the building where we're located out at NAS Corpus Christi, adjacent to CCAD. It's where those 120 personnel are largely located, except a lot of times they're out in the shops or TDY. So The two smaller illustrations represent our direct on-site support to the field and to the depot. But we also provide remote support to the commercial repair operations, just like we do to the depot and to the field. The support that we provide takes the form of maintenance engineering calls, MECs, or MICs, as some of the field operators call them. That's the document that supplements the manual to provide deviations and waivers, crash or combat damage repairs, improved tech data, part shortage workarounds, or improved repair processes. For the commercial repair activities, we work through what's called a Form 1379. It's a document that goes through DCMA and contracting. Serves the same purpose as a MEC, maintenance engineering call. Next. All right, sorry, it's fine, you can go back one. So where you see the little professor there, the bottom, you're right. That represents that we are the Army's subject matter experts in maintenance engineering. We work closely with the enterprise on quality deficiency reporting analysis. We also get involved as needed with crash investigations. We support the analytical investigation branch at Corpus very closely. Then we're also deeply involved in development of new technologies for applications to repairs. That's a subject that my colleague, Mr. Cifuentes, is going to expand upon here in a few minutes. Next. Finally, we are the technical proponent, or the proponent for the technical data in the DMWARs, and we work closely with the enterprise for the technical content in the ETMs as well. What we put in MECs is often turned into a change to the manuals through a maintenance engineering order, which is an approved change to the manual that can be applied immediately. We also write new DMWARs as needed. We've written a number of DMWARs. We've also done portions of DMWARs where we write work packages. Being located at Corpus with a little additional funding, we can also prototype the work we do through Corpus Christi. It's something they have to agree to do, but we have the capability to actually do the repairs there that we're prototyping to put into the manuals. Finally, for the commercial sources, we're involved in source approval requests. If companies want to become sources for the Army, we're one proponent for approving those sources. Prior to a contract, we review the M&O technical data that's going to be in the contract. We review the contractor's repair plans. And finally, we go out on product verification audits post-contract and review the product they're producing. Next slide. In summary, the Maintenance Engineering Division is all about improving Army aircraft and components to support Army aviation readiness by keeping parts on wing and spares on the shelf. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Cesar Cifuentes. I work for Aviation Solutions, and I also support the Maintenance Engineering Division here in Corpus Christi. Next. I will be discussing some of the technologies that impact repair, reliability, and give an update on each of these applications. Some of the topics I'll be discussing will be Tagnite, isotropic superfinishing, cold spray, laser additive manufacturing, and the composite DMWAR. Next slide. Tagnite is an alternative method of protecting magnesium parts from corrosion. The process is an improvement to the historically used Dow 17 and HAE coating. The figures show the UH-60 is in different stages of the process. The first stage is in the strip condition. The second one is the housing after the Tagnite has been applied, and the third one is after the rock hard has been applied. Rock hard is an enameling, a stoven enamel that is baked on top of the Tagnite coating. Next slide. The benefits on Tagnite is that it does not contain any chromate. The rock hard coating improves the abrasive resistance of the component when applied. The Tagnite can be applied as a brush application for touch-ups, and it will decrease the man-hours required to address these corrosion issues out in the field. The depot I was corrected. I kept saying depot, but it's depot, has obtained and required equipment and is currently drafting the technical data for these processes. They're currently doing brush tag night on the H-64 and the UH-60 aircraft. Next slide. ISF is a polishing process that improves the surface finish of the gear teeth. The gears are placed in a tumbler and vibrated with proprietary media and chemicals to remove the machine surfaces. Looking at this picture, it's easy to tell which one has had the ISF process done with it produces a mirror-like finish. Next slide. The benefits are of the ISF is the gears operate with less stress, therefore they run cooler, quieter, and more efficient. And essentially it extends the life of the gears and requires less component replacements. The depot is in process of obtaining the required equipment and has had some technical data approved at this time. Next point. Go back. Go back forward.
Doesn't like that.
Go forward. Go back. Stay. Sorry.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Cold spray is a process that adds material by embedding metallic particles that are sprayed at supersonic speed. These are used currently right now for aluminum magnesium components. The material is built up and machined down to drawing tolerances. The figure shows the damage that is susceptible to the UH-60 transmission sump. The figure on the right-hand side shows a repaired surface. You could actually see the change in color, and that's the added material that was put on there and subsequently machined down. We actually delivered an aircraft last month with this repair on it to Fort Rucker, so this does work. Next slide. Go back one. There. The benefits of cold spray is that it can restore the critical surfaces. It's also used to repair some of the platings. That way, the parts don't have to be stripped down completely and replated. They could actually repair some of the platings. This also improves the reliability of the repair, thus extending the life of the part. The depot is in process of obtaining the required equipment, and some technical data has been approved, and some are being drafted as we speak as well. Next slide. Laser additive manufacturing is similar to cold spray, but this one actually melts the metallic particles on top of the surface, creating adding material. Then they get subsequently machined down within drawing tolerances. The figure on the right shows a UH-60 shaft that has been repaired and machined down to meet the drawing tolerances. Next slide. So the benefits are that the critical surfaces can be restored as well. Now we're able to repair some parts that were once deemed unrepairable. We're now able to restore them and put them back on the shelf and on the aircraft, thus extending the life of the parts. The depot has had some technical data approved, and it's currently in the test process of qualifying these repairs, so it's sending parts out to vendors to get the laser additive manufacturing done to them. Next slide. We're developing a demoir that will establish guidelines for the repair of the advanced composites. These components are fabricated using boron, carbon fiber, and Kevlar, unlike the conventional composites, which mainly use fiberglass. So the benefits of this is that the depot will align itself with standard industry practices. It'll increase the repairability, and will be applicable to all the military aircraft here on the CCAD. So it will transition between all platforms. The depot is currently working on upgrading the facilities in preparation for these repairs, and some of the technicians have already attended some of these advanced composite courses. The slide shows some of the advanced composite components that are on our aircraft to date. However, we expect the use of advanced composites to grow since the manufacturers are exploring and understanding the benefits of the use of these advanced composite aircraft. So the use of these is essentially make the aircraft more efficient and give it the ability to carry more payload. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Okay. Well, a little change of pace, I think. Anyways, so I'm Steve Kinski again. I'm the operations officer at DLA Aviation. Just to talk about DLA for a little bit, we're about a $46 billion business. If you look across all the different types of items that we manage everything from food to clothing to, I think more interesting for this group, Class 9 parts, and those Class 9 consumable parts that support all the services. More specifically, in about 2005, DLA organized itself into to centers that were more tied more towards both specific industries on the supply chain side of the house and specific customers on the demand side of the house. So if you, there's really three kind of places where DLA is for Class 9. Philadelphia is doing the small nuts and bolts, the gaskets, the small industrial hardware is actually the name of that supply chain. They face that industry. In Columbus, we're facing, that's both, we have a land supply chain and a maritime supply chain. They're more mechanical parts, and of course they have a large electronics piece there. And for aviation, our big items are aircraft engine parts, the structural components of the aircraft, and bearings, and a lot of the actuating assemblies and whatnot. And then within our face, so we face industry that way, and then we're also aligned towards our customers. For each service, we have a branch that's dedicated to facing that service. For the Army, we have Colonel John Smith, who's back in the audience somewheres. But given how complex our organization is and the fact that our supply chains are so diverse, our strategy is to have a single point of entry for our customers to go. So within John's team at DLA Aviation Richmond, he actually has a person that is facing every DODAC in the Army. So all questions, we're designed to kind of allow all that information to flow through him. He's really our person out on the front that his sole role in life is to communicate with the customer, to help customer deal with DLA, and most importantly from my viewpoint is to gather intelligence from our customer, the Army in this case, of what their needs are in the future. Because that's the biggest piece of information that he can gather for me is what are those new items that we're going to need to carry, not only what do we need to carry, but where it needs to be put, so I can provide the fastest response to you. I think the big message from us, and you heard some of it talked about to earlier, is that we are all in supporting your requirements. From General Williams down to all the buyers on the floor to John's entire team, our focus is getting those parts where you need them, whether it be additional investment, a change in positioning of material that we currently have, whether it's a different contracting solution or using some of our broader sustainment solutions that we have to provide specific outcomes for you. I think just to kind of talk, the trends have been increasing demand for us. We've had about a 5% growth year over year if you look across the entire spectrum of, both that's Air Force, Navy, and Army requirements. I throw the Marine Corps in with the Navy since I'm an old Navy guy there. All their aviation is aligned to Navy if you haven't been in that space at all. But that demand is coming both from operational field units. I think the services have taken the investment money that has been given them by DoD, and they're bulking up their, I'll call them retail allowance, the plane side allowances. So in the field units, they're increasing the level of inventory that's being carried. And in our industrial sites, that workload is being driven up, and that workload is supported by the consumable piece parts. So that is also driving an increase, and that's, again, it's been about a 5% growth year over year. We're also driven by this 80% mission capable memo that we've seen from the DoD. We're working with the Air Force and Navy teams, and we already had existing conversations going on. General Williams, one of his first things he talked to us about was a focus on Army aviation readiness when he checked in. And Charlie Lilly, my boss, is on, I think, weekly, it almost seems like hourly calls with AMCOM and spends time on the phone with General Perna as well. So we're definitely all committed, and we've made several investments in all the aviation platforms right now already. We kind of have three big levers that we use to provide our sustainment solutions. We have our strategic solutions that we have with the OEMs. We've got these large deals that even go beyond just part support, but helping to, with almost in the engineering, and they could be leveraged for engineering or reliability solutions. again, those are just tools that are available if chosen. We've got long-term contracts that we do, and that's really what that buys us is it reduces the lead time of those items. We've got them already priced, so it's really just when we see the requirement come forward, we can quickly execute those orders. That's about 80% of our business is done in an automated manner. We really couldn't survive with the volume of business we do without having that level of automation, and that's a primary lever that I push on with the team, is to improve and expand the stuff that we have covered by these long-term contracts. And then that final piece is that tactical workload that we have. That's the tough one-off requirements that come to us, and that's again about 20. That's that 20% that ends up the stuff that we end up talking about all the time. You know, the challenging awards to make, and that's where the team effort comes involved, from the engineering to the forecasting to us getting it on the shelf and bought and priced. So that's kind of a dance that you have to coordinate and to get everybody doing their piece of that thing. And again, that's where we'll use John Smith's team to help prioritize that work. There's a lot of work on the plate. Not all of it is equal. So that's really where we rely on John to help port us to here. This stuff is more important than the next. So again, kind of the slapping on the table point is to use John Smith. That's why he and his team are out there. And if you don't know John Smith, you should learn to know him, because he's really your conduit to aviation. Oh, there he is. He's back there raising his hand. I think you all know him because he seems to know a lot of people here in the room. So I guess just as kind of takeaway and going back to what Mr. Marriott said earlier this morning, we're absolutely on the team. We know our number, and we are looking ourselves in the mirror. We've made some significant improvements, I think, in our tactical work, speeding up the tactical workload. We understood that it was taking us too long to buy stuff, and we've made a pretty concerted effort to not only add stuff to our long-term contracts to avoid the tactical workload, but to speed up the tactical workload. And we've been able to reduce about 30% of our time that we've taken to do that tactical workload over the past 3 years. I think we know the play, or at least we think we know the play. I think where the challenge is the audibles that come up, and audibles are kind of a fact of life, and that's where we get back into this forecasting and planning information. And I think that's just the team sport, not only the planning signal from our customers, the industrial, but passing that planning signal along to the industrial base. So, because there's really trying to reduce the tack time from when we know that there's a part that's going to start, a failure mode that's going to start popping up, to actually having the sustainment solution to address that failure mode. So with that, that's all I have for now, and I'll pass it on to Steve.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank Quad A, Mr. Nady, for allowing me to represent the TASMG community, as well as the National Guard Army Aviation on the panel today, and of course CCAD and Corpus Christi community for being such a great host of this event. So what I did want to do is quickly talk about what the TASMG is, the Theater Aviation Sustainment Maintenance Group, formerly known as the AVCRAD. People probably more familiar with that term. 2012, along with the MTO change from a TDA to an MTO, the TASMGs came about. So we're a group-level organization commanded by a 06 and have the command and staff that goes along with that. We're really a theater aviation asset. Really, and also we're focused on that sustainment maintenance piece, if you will. We're very similar to an ASB, if you will, to relate it to something that's more common in the military structure. But there is something that's a little bit unique about the TASMG as opposed to the ASB. And if you look at our mission set, that we have a requirement to perform limited depot sustainment maintenance at the theater level, and we also required to participate in that national maintenance program is one of those sources of supply, which we do that through the NMP and also through reimbursable type of programs through the PMs and item managers. Along with being an MTO organization, we are fully expeditionary and have those deployable assets. If you look at the structure that's depicted on the slide, we do have an HHD, which it supports the command and staff, also has some warehouse and SSA capabilities. We have a very large alpha company, which is our maintenance company. Those are whether flight line or back shop maintainers. And then we also have a support company, which allows us to be self-sustaining with ground mechanics, ground transportation, feed section, mess sections, and things like that. So the TASMG really is a deployable expeditionary military unit. So the TASMGs, there's 4 throughout the inventory, 1106 in California, 1107th in Missouri, not too far away, 1108th in Gulfport, Mississippi, and then us in Groton, Connecticut. Each one has a full support area that we have a direct tie with. We run their Class 9 parts budget in order to capture credits and maintain the best we can, the MC and FMC rates of the aircraft in each support area. Each one has about a 400-soldier MTO structure. Associated with that, we also have a full-time workforce based on the fact that we have a National Guard Bureau mission to maintain or to offer those sustainment level activities to each one of our respective support areas. So just as a general note, so out of my almost 400 soldiers that I have in uniform, approximately 54% of those are full-time within our organization. So if you were to go to TASMG, you would see a large number of folks wearing the uniform as either dual status technicians or active guard reserve soldiers performing those maintenance tasks, including some of those limited depot tasks and sustainment operations. So we are a AS 9110 certified facility, so we do have our aerospace standard. We maintained that for the last 5 or 6 years. As an important note, so Colonel Joukowsky, my commanding officer, and Sergeant Major Paul Garofalo are both deployed forward as we speak right now in Kuwait. We do have soldiers forward deployed Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, and several other areas in that CENTCOM AOR. And we've maintained that footprint as the TASMG or AVCRAD community since 2003 between the four TASMs that are depicted on the map here, plus the 1100th Admiral out of Maryland has helped out in those rotations. So currently they're on Task Force 22, ongoing continuous operation that has our soldiers deployed. And the bottom right of the slide there, that's Camp Air, John. And if you look just above that, that would be our facility in Groton, Connecticut. So what we do back home here directly translates into what we do to support that warfighter in theater through our continuous footprint of approximately 80 soldiers on the ground at any point in time, helping actually in theater with those aviation sustainment activities. So some of the benefits that, since we're here at CCAD, and I know this panel was focused on readiness and how CCAD related to that, we've had a great relationships with the CCAD community, specifically with the training of our aviation maintainers. We have, for the last number of years, participated in their training programs, which have been a great benefit for us. As you know, for National Guard units, including the TASMGs, even though we have a large workforce that's full-time, we do have a large M-Day, if you will, those traditional National Guard soldiers, that 1 weekend a month, the 2 week during the year. And we've taken advantage of the opportunities that are presented down here at CCAD for not only our full-time workforce, but that part-time workforce. They have great we call them the artisans here, those aviation professional maintainers that we're able to send soldiers here, as well as other National Guard entities as well. They get better at those skill sets, and in turn they bring those back to either Groton, Connecticut, or the other TASMGs and produce better maintenance, if you will, whether it comes to aircraft themselves or actually components. We've been so successful in this on improving our skill sets and with our soldiers that we've also implemented a similar line of effort at our facility. So while CCAD, Connecticut's a lot closer to a lot of our support area than CCAD is, so there's not always the opportunity to put those soldiers on the road for that 2-week training. So what we try and do is emulate what CCAD's kind of has done as far as a training activity, and we've done the same thing in Groton. So we'll have units that will actually perform those 2-week annual trainings in Groton, Connecticut, or the weekend drills, or come down on a several-day basis to hone their skill sets. And really what that does, as Colonel Atkins mentioned earlier, so we're supporting that warfighter. That warfighter is not only flying those aircraft on the operational side, that warfighter is those maintainers forward deployed, turning wrenches on aircraft and components in all the AOs that are supported by the military and specifically the U.S. Army, regardless of component. So what we've really done is taken to heart that support that warfighter, train that warfighter, because with the better maintenance trained force, you're going to get a better readiness rate, and you're going to be able to fly those aircraft, keep those aircraft flying, keep the crews proficient in their mission and ready for that mission whenever the federal or state or local authorities call upon that. So anyway, but thank you very much. Be followed by Mr. Hess.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for inviting us back again on behalf of Mr. Covington, our new PM, who is in class right now. He would have liked to have been here, and I do appreciate this because right now our deputy is briefing our 4-star commander along with an operational commander on availability of assets, and right now we're 19 aircraft short, so it's not going to be a good brief, but I'm avoiding that one, so I do appreciate that. I had to put the slides together. He gets to brief. I like it how that works. Just want to give you a brief overview of our leadership. We've got kind of a long name. We've got a lot of different assets, a lot of unique capabilities within the program office, and we've got a lot of transitions going on, so we'll talk about that. And my concern fits into every briefing that so far has happened this morning on components, so it worked out very nicely. This is our leadership. You got Mr. Covington at top. He's our new PM. He's been here about, he got here in December of last year. Lieutenant Colonel Maddox is our military deputy. One note on this, it's a little bit different from last year. We do have a new Rotary branch chief, which is Michael Beasley. And we do have 2 separate chief engineers. For those that were familiar with Scott Vandersall, who used to be our chief engineer that covered both sides, we now have Jerry Bird that covers strictly rotary assets. And we have Tim Floyd, who covers the C-130 variants. That lets them specialize in their areas. It really started, it was getting hard because a helicopter and a C-130 are not the same, not even close. This is all the different aircraft that we support. We do have 2 paths. We've got 2 program executive officers we support. One is U.S. SOCOM fixed wing for our special ops 130s, and then we have the Air Force for our Air Force 130s and our helicopters. As you can see, we've got a lot of different types of aircraft with unique capabilities, and our largest fleet is the 60G at 95 operational. We do have a test aircraft in there. And we're supposed to have 112, so we're actually short 17 due to losses that we've had either in combat or in training. Also, we are supporting the new acquisition programs for the new J models coming on board and the new helicopter acquisition programs. And one thing of note on this, we also, because of the diversity of the engineering especially, we also stood up a new chief of logistics for each of those areas. So we now have a dedicated chief of logistics just for rotary and one just for the C-130 side of the house. So now they can actually spend their time helping and focusing on the mission. Somewhere I think I missed the slide, but okay. This kind of gives you the, let's skip over it. Oh, yeah, I think it's taken, okay. The other slide in there basically showed where all of our units, our aircraft are based at throughout the world. The one thing I was going to point at is we do have an operating location here at CCAD. It's the only depot that we have a physical presence with our liaisons here because of the mission and importance of CCAD. What this depicts is, you can see on the left the number of different variants of C-130s we had doing the mission. At one point, we had 3 different gunships to do a gunship mission. That's actually going down to 1 ACJ. Right now, the ACW is the only all-weather gunship we have, and we've got the ACU for other operations. And those are, for those that have ever special ops, they really like those flying above, especially with the 105 cannon on the aircraft. These colors change, but okay. These are our different rotary platforms, and the ones that are in line are the ones that are actually going away. What we have is at the bottom, you'll see the TH-1H. That's our training aircraft. And it was a converted UH-1H from the Army that we converted, took it down to the shell, and then built back up as part of a modification program. So that's our initial pilot training, which is also at Fort Rucker. Then in the next set of columns, you've got the HH-60G, our operational loss replacement, which is we're converting Army UH-60Ls to HH-60Gs. They're going to be a different configuration due to some less than 10 obsolescence systems that we had to convert. So there's going to be a different block configuration. And then the orange or red depicts the HH-60W, the new combat replacement aircraft that should be coming on board in 2021-22. So we're transitioning. We'll have basically 3 variants of the 60s flying at one time until we get to a standard platform in 2030. On top, you see our UH-1Ns, which do the nuclear and command and control for DC, VIP travel, and we've got some other aircraft at other locations. This was just announced a little while ago. It's going to be replaced with a MH-139. So the kickoff meeting for that's next week. What you see there is a very notional schedule that we put together of what we think it might look like, but nothing's been awarded as far as deliveries on the actual production end. We've been talking about readiness and the Secretary of Defense's memo to get to 80% on MC. We track it a little bit differently, and let me give you the best example I can give you. If I get to 80% on MC for my HH-60G fleet, I have 55 aircraft that will be operational. The community needs 70. Because I'm missing 17 aircraft that we have lost through the years, and I haven't replaced them yet, my MC rate is based upon what they have in the field, not what they need to do the mission. So we track it to an AA standard, which is what's being briefed today. But so what we're doing is we're trying to, for the next 2 years until we can get this fleet built back up, which should happen by the end of 20, because we're taking the aircraft, we give them to the Guard, and then the Guard's going to give aircraft back to the to the active duty fleet. We are doing some extraordinary measures to keep iron on the ramp. One of those is limiting how many aircraft we have in depot possessed or at PDM. Another one is we're doing some block modifications. And then basically working and pressing hard to get the operational loss. We have even gone so far as, for the first time since I've been there in 11 years, we actually have waived the depot requirement for 1 year for one of our aircraft. And that was after an extensive inspection by the unit and a risk assessment by engineering, just to keep an additional aircraft at a unit. Now, our aircraft come in, and for those that have been at CCAD a while, people get possessive because our base will send you an aircraft, and then that aircraft's going exactly back to that base. But we had one unit that's 6 aircraft. They lost one in an accident in Iraq. Then one was in depot, and another one was going in. They were going to be down to 50% of their aircraft at the unit, and they were going to have 2 flyable. So hence, that was the waiver. So we track these at the unit by tail number, just to keep the ops community flying. Okay. So the concerns, and this is kind of piggybacking off of the earlier discussion about the component repairs. What we've been seeing is, give you an example, and this is not surge capability, this is our regular demand rate. We had about 100 plus items off of the FY19 requirements, about $8 million that was declined because of capacity, not having the piece parts, not able to do the work. So that's about 26% of our money and about 8% of our items that we couldn't get repaired and couldn't get components. So right now they're having to go out and do emergency contracts with other vendors. Well, what that's going to create is now I'm going to have two people, you and somebody else, is now going to compete for the bit and piece parts materials to repair these items. So I'm piling on the nightmare. So somehow we've got to get into a situation where we're able to regularly produce the components of what's required on an annual basis. You can kind of see, I didn't give a long list. I had about 10 items. I picked the top ones. I'm not going to get into rotor blades. That's an entire fleet issue. The 60 transmissions, that is a big issue because we did lose all of our FY18 funding. Right now, we're 2 years behind the production schedule on that component. And so we lost an entire year worth of funding that went to another repairable outside of the 60s. Currently, we are not in what you would call the aircraft on the ground, except for one component. I'm excluding blades. But we are getting close. We've got the parts to where we are so low on the shelf and so low on our, what we call our readiness spares package that we deploy with, that we are getting close to where we're going to have groundings. So we've just got to figure out a way to get into, with bill of materials and everything else, get into a steady production. So what I've got is I've got our supply POC there, Darren Crowley. That would be my POC to help. How can we do this? One thing which really, it's interesting when we talk about all the different services and how we go and work with each other. We all have different requirements. We all have different funding sources. We all know that at the beginning of the year, we're not going to have our money, but yet we have requirements that need to be repaired. So we stop the inductions until we get the money. We know the money's coming. How can we go over that? Because the Army has one process, we have another. And and we have the same thing with the Navy. Until they have money, they don't want to do anything. Okay? 1 October, we don't mysteriously have money in our account. It's usually a month or 2 months. And very, very thankful we're under CRA and love it that Congress passed the budget, we're getting more money. But we got to make 1 October be seamless through the rest of the year. And then getting the repeatable production process and any other areas that we can help with. I didn't put his commercial number, so if somebody wants to see me afterwards, I can give you his commercial number. That's a DSN number for Darren. But that is my supply expert for my 60s and Hueys. He would be the POC. And I think that's mine.
All righty. So we'll open it up for questions, and I'll start if it's okay, because I do have a question for DLA. So,
Remember, you got to go back to work together tomorrow.
right,
Okay?
exactly, and that's, so as Colonel Atkins talked about this being a transition year for recap, as we ramp up to the 48 victors in the out years. I know DLA has put together a lot of efforts to support that, to make sure that's successful. Can you talk a little bit about the red team that you've established and how you're supporting CCAD with the red team effort?
Okay. So the red team is a concept we kind of founded with the Air Force, really to help get through some engine production problems. And really what we're doing is we're taking our forecasted demand from the workload and comparing that to what we have on the shelf or on order and the delivery times that we have on those. You see the gaps that pop up, and we basically go item by item through those gaps, and we bridge the gaps to the extent that we can. It's really the beauty of the red team is getting not only the supply and contracting people in there, but getting the cognizant engineer in the room, getting industry in the room in some cases, but all the aspects that slow you down. You know, because what we found when again, this was a learning process that we learned with the engine, is that we'd talk and, oh, well, I just need to get this engineering disposition, or we're looking for this waiver. Company X says they can make it, but they may have to make it out of a different material. So all these things that in their normal course of operation would take a long amount of time. The red team is the intent of the red team is to bring everyone together so it's a conversation and not a, you know, put this paperwork over this fence and let that process happen and then they spit it. You know, that's one of the challenges of our DoD supply chain is the authorities that and the decisions that go from place to place to place and how much time they take. So it's really, the red team is a means of cutting down that time, having a conversation instead of a paperwork shuffle.
Thanks.
Bob Sharp, CCAD. Again, for DLA, one of the issues that we're working with your team is that when we...
I've got a knife.
is when we forecast a part, maybe we need it in 10 months. It isn't until closer to the required time that we find out that part is not available. And working with them, trying to find some sort of automated tool or some sort of way that we find out at the time of forecast whether that part will be available at the required date. Do you have any thoughts on that or any way forward?
I think we have that information. I think it's just a matter of us communicating that back to you. And John's team has tools, and once that forecast is actually laid in, and that the forecast, it's about 30 days from when you tell me you're going to need something until that forecast actually gets into the system and where the tools will work. But we do have supportability tools that can go look at a group of NINs, like say you had an H60 project that you were working on. There's a good example, there's some kits that we're building. There's these 40 kits that we're building, I think for you, right? Yeah. So those kits we're building, so I've got a team that's working those kits, and I know right now which ones are at risk and which ones aren't, well before, we're planning, and we're working through those gaps. Again, with a red team-like process, it's, we're working through to figure out how to mitigate those gaps the best we can. And provide the feedback, so, really what I want, some parts I'm not going to be able to get in time. I know that. But what I owe you is, I'm not going to get this part in time to let you deal with how does that impact my production? Can I work around it? Do I have to just wait and do the production later? But I do think we have tools to get you that information sooner than later, and so it's not, my intent is not to have you actually order it and take the back order. My intent would be to communicate to you, 4, 5, 6, however long I can ahead of time. I'm going to be short to your need. And I think it's just a matter of communicating. I think we have the tools to do that. So, and it's all John's fault. He's hiding back there. No, but I think we can do that. So,
Go ahead.
This is Scott Harris from PEO Aviation, PMATE. So is the TASM-Gs, are they still participating in the National Maintenance Program? And if so, have you assessed additional opportunities to address some of the current readiness drivers for ALC?
We've been working through National Guard Bureau to specifically, and we've seen that list of the readiness drivers. Some of the downfalls to the National Maintenance Program for the TASM-G is the predictability of the workload. As I stated before, currently have 80 soldiers that are deployed forward with the Connecticut, and then California will be right behind us. So our workforce fluctuates, and it's not easily replaced because of the full-time status of a lot of our technicians and active guard reserves. So right now with those 80 soldiers, I'm at a loss of 46 full-time workforce. So my workload goes down, it'll come back up, and it'll go back down again, presumably in 3 years when we do the next rotation. So we've struggled as a TASM community with maintaining that stable workforce for a variety of reasons, one of them being the deployments, other being, like everybody else, competition with outside agencies. What we've had greater success with is working with the PMs and the item managers direct on a reimbursable basis for bulk items. Main rotor blades are a good example. If I can get a 100 main rotor blades, I can program that in short term to look at. I can do 100 main rotor blades in 1 year, so that's a relatively short term. I know my workforce and the supply chains and everything else, my budgets will stabilize for that first year. 2-3 years down the line, it starts to vary. We start to have a lot of fluctuations in our capabilities.
So, and I'll just add to that. So the National Maintenance Program is controlled by Army Materiel Command and on the aviation side through AMCOM. So the TASM-Gs are a source of repair for the National Maintenance Program, but they're workloaded through our Industrial Operations Directorate. So years ago, there was a move to reduce the amount of work at the National Maintenance Program. The landscape has somewhat changed. To my earlier comments, we're looking for multiple sources. So we are, and AMC is looking at the National Maintenance Program again on where there's opportunities, but it's the right opportunities, and that's where we really have to do the analysis. So a lot of our readiness drivers, it's subcomponents to those readiness drivers that are the inhibitors of turning them out. And having another source of repair does not fix the problem. It just creates more sources of repair fighting for the same subcomponents. So we have to really look at what components we're picking, but we are looking at the TASMGs and other sites to expand national maintenance.
Okay, well, Don, thank you to you and your panel. It was a very good panel. We appreciate you being here. And I think it is now 14:15 according to my watch. That means that we're going to go on break till about